IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand for a free 7-day trial and 30% off the lifetime of your account. Visit itpro.tv/Security Weekly and use the code SW30. LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free, commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logRhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries in the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Really quick, I want you to come check out Wild West Hackin' Fest. That's a show, a conference put on by Black Hills Information Security on October 27th and the 28th. There will be talks from Dave Kennedy, Deviant Egypt, Chris Nickerson, Chris Gates, Mike Poor, Sub T, and many more. You can find out more information at wildwesthackinfest.com. If you ever wanted to visit South Dakota, and you're in information security, this is your opportunity to do that and come hang out with many of us from Security Weekly. Very excited about that conference. Make sure you go check it out. You got plenty of time to plan your trip out there, which is going to be awesome. This technical segment is sponsored by Javelin Networks, and I'm very, very excited. And this is a topic that our listeners know that is recently, and I think over time, very near and dear to my heart. It's something that has grown as an extension, of my work on the show. Specifically, interviewing. What started it all was interviewing Josh Abram, Jabra, and Josh started talking about some of the popular methods that he used and his team used to gain a foothold in organizations and basically get the keys to the kingdom. I have somewhat continued Josh's study informally, spoken with over half a dozen penetration testers about these specific issues in Active Directory that every single one of them agrees is part of, if not the foundation for every single one of them and for gaining a foothold in the organization. And not only that, when I say over half a dozen, I mean these are people who are representing each one of them hundreds of penetration tests. And they all say things that just, basically keep me up at night. And, one of those things is I'm like, well, how many customers actually properly lock down Active Directory? And they all say between 1% and 3%. And Active Directory is in 80% plus organizations. I don't know I don't believe I'm overstating it. No one has told me yet, and I've been speaking about this for probably 4 or 5 months with various folks and on the show. No one has called me out as overstating the problem. That this is a huge problem, if not one of, and I will label it as like the number one problem that I see from a technology standpoint today in organizations as in terms of presenting exposures and vulnerabilities in your networks today. And not just vulnerabilities in the software sense, but as we were talking about with Steve Lipner, these are design flaws and stem from legacy operating system support. So at InfoSec World, I had the opportunity to meet the fine folks from Javelin Networks, and they're like, yeah, we got this problem totally solved. And I'm like, no way. And since then, I've spent a lot more time with Javelin Networks, and I'm like, no, like, you guys are awesome. Like, we need to do a whole bunch more content on the show because I think this is a problem, and I know that you have solutions for this and can share this information on the show. So with that, I hope I didn't set the bar too high for Roy and Guy from Javelin Networks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, you're welcome. And so, Roy and Guy, why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourselves, your full name, what you're doing today, and a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. So my name is Roi Abutbul. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Javelin Networks. I served in the Israeli Air Force for something like 7 years. I was part of the networking and security side of some of the biggest projects that we had back in my days. After I left my service, I left the army. I worked as a consultant for the Vatican, and also for other military organizations around the world. Guy?
Yeah. So my name is Guy Franco. I'm the also co-founder and CTO of Javelin Networks. I also came from the IDF. I served in the intelligence corps in Israel for about 7 years. Part of my job at my unit was to develop unique security tools and methodology, mostly for the unit use. I participated in a bunch of worldwide operations as a red teamer. And afterwards, I also was a blue teamer. I actually built the incident and response in my unit. After I released from the army, I used to consult for major companies and in Israel and around the world regarding huge incidents that we're having. And all of the time, we saw the same problem going over and over again. It's all about the Active Directory. When I was a red teamer, it was all about the Active Directory. When I was a blue teamer and responder, I basically dealt with the same problems, with the same kind of things that we are actually talking about. We're going to talk about today.
Fantastic. And you both are from Israel, which in computer security, very popular for startup companies in security to be based out of Israel. And many of my favorite people in the industry are from Israel. So it's really awesome. Now, I had to ask you both before we get started. Did you, in Israel, you're required by the country to perform military duties. Did you specifically, did you specifically go into the security and computer aspect of it with the hopes that that would be your career? Was that like the stepping stone for both of you?
I can say from my side, yes. I mean, prior to the military service, we had to kind of go to a college to get a degree, and then this is kind of the path I took.
Yeah, so for me, the path was a little bit different because I was recruited by the intelligence. So they tracked you down while you were at about 11th grade or something like that. And then they do some tests for you, decided if you are good for the intelligence use. So I was really, I don't know, I was kind of lucky to be selected to the one of the elite units in the IDF to lead security and cyber technology forward.
So they identified you as a hacker guy, right from the start. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to both of you to talk about why it's so important for us to protect Active Directory today.
Yeah, so it's simple, Paul. I mean, did you know that from any machine that is connected to the domain with no special privileges, you can get 100% visibility into the entire corporation without any risk of detection? I see it's actually, the attackers are actually doing that by simply query the Active Directory. Think about it. Attackers today can ask the Active Directory to provide them for a list of all the servers and computers that are registered in the corporation, in the corporate, along with a list of all the powerful identities. Attackers even can be more specific and ask the Active Directory to provide a list of servers with a particular application that running on that server. And you know what? They can also learn when was the last time someone logged into that server, and actually all that information that they are retrieving from the Active Directory helps them to determine if that target internally it's worth their time or it's a trap. So
yeah, I think that's really interesting. When I started thinking about this, it's really, I think, stems from the inherent ability of Microsoft software to want to help people connect to resources, right?
True, exactly.
And that is
to manage their assets.
Yeah, and that's not like it's not a feature, it's not a bug. it's just like one of the foundational elements of Microsoft Active Directory software, which makes it very scary for me to think about how we're always exploiting that. And, Joff, feel free to chime in here. Joff is actually an active penetration tester today. I know he uses all of these tactics and techniques in his test today as well.
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, what you guys just said is 100% true. I mean, you get on a system, and the first thing you're doing is asking the Active Directory for as much information from a reconnaissance perspective as you can get, and that's a lot. I mean, and I know in our pen tests, we're not even probably asking the Active Directory for as much as we could ask it for. So it's an amazing source.
I think it's. I was just going to say, I think it's amazing how much there is in Active Directory. I wish Carlos were on, but he's with the new child. But I remember a conversation with folks at Microsoft where we were talking about some of the information we were pulling from Active Directory for mobile devices, and the folks at Microsoft were like, "Where do you get that? Do you have to use an agent?" We're like, "No, that Active Directory knows this about devices that connect via ActiveSync."
Right.
Really? Wait, what?
I use this protocol called LDAP.
Right. It's unbelievable how much data is out there, and if it's not just Active Directory. We don't use it alone. You tie Active Directory to Exchange, and then how much more information is there? And then you start getting into personal information, not just system information.
Now, Roy and Guy, is there? Am I correct in stating that you don't need elevated privileges, and you really just need to be connected to one computer, regardless of its importance or privilege in the domain, to collect this information? Is that true?
That's completely correct. And the main reason for that is because how actually the entire Kerberos authentication works. So Microsoft did a very good decision, I can say, introducing us to Kerberos 20 years ago. It's basically a stateless protocol that solves all the issues with the high availability, because each of the node can act by its own, and there are two basically steps for the authentication. The first step is I need to pass my credentials to the Active Directory, and in return I can get a ticket that is valid for X amount of time. With this ticket, I can actually grant access or ask for permissions from the Active Directory for all the assets inside the environment. So by design, once I authenticate myself as a user, I can just view the entire directory in order to know about what kind of assets I want to ask permissions. So by design, how Microsoft built this entire software, it's all the information and all the servers has to be exposed.
So now, given this issue exists for, I would guess, a large number of enterprises and businesses today, both using on-premise Active Directory and in the cloud in Azure. Is that true?
It is true. I mean, 9 out of 10 companies around the world are using Active Directory to manage their resources, and it's agnostic to the vertical, from governments to hospital to banks, whatever. And actually, according to Gartner, almost 100% of their resources, the computers, are literally actually connected to the domain.
So it's interesting. We were talking with Steve Lipner about this, and we were talking about legacy resources like Windows 95 and Windows 98, and to a certain extent OS 10 suffer from those legacy issues of password authentication past the hash, LM hashes, and I think Jack can attest to this too. A recommendation is, well, don't connect them to the domain. It doesn't seem like people are doing that, though. Why is that?
I mean, people like to manage their assets through a central place. Basically, if you want to manage the assets through the Active Directory, you have to configure local policy and create all the software deployments manually. So there has to be some way you can somewhat control these computers, although they're completely legacy. So it's a really issue. It's a tough issue because on the one hand, it's really operational burden if you disconnect them from the domain. On the other hand, it actually exposes you with a huge amount of risk inside the environment.
So I'm actually, I'm just a little curious. So some of the things that I do as a penetration tester when I get into an environment is I utilize Active Directory mostly to query information. The very first thing I do, let's say it this way, is to query information about users and groups, right? It's my first go-to place because I want to understand what the privilege structure is.
Roy is smiling because you just fell into their trap, and we'll get to that. I'm laughing hysterically to myself over here.
I'm giving you an opportunity. So the question is this: as a regular end station that I've compromised as a pen tester, how often do under normal operations does that regular end user actually have to query the privileged group information of the Active Directory? And what are you guys doing to segment that information off? And how are you consulting? And what sort of technologies do you have to prevent the activities that I engage in as a pen tester?
Guy, would you like to take it?
Yes, of course. So it's really good question. So basically, once you get a foothold on a machine, most of the time you would try to hunt for admins, because once you get a domain admin, basically you have the key for the kingdoms. You can do whatever you want. You can access almost everything you need. So the key element here is to look for how the attacker's methodologies work. So we know that they are looking for administrators and high privileged account. The way usually they're trying to obtain credentials from these stations are either trying to somewhat gain a foothold on a computer that actually domain admin is connected, or another way is to try and figure out all the service accounts inside the environment. So in this type of attack, you can actually query for all the SPNs that runs under specific user account, and you can request a ticket and then dump the ticket and try to crack it locally. So all these type of methodologies,
you're describing what we know as the Kerberos technique.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So just go for it.
So the way we saw how to solve this problem is it's an issue because it's all about the trust. Basically, if I'm on a station, I'm free to access and query the Active Directory. And software sometimes even do some weird queries. We saw some really weird stuff going on, but we can say that about 95% of an organization doesn't really need these sort of queries. So the way we dealt with this problem is by actually obfuscating the Active Directory from the endpoints level. What it means is that if I'm a regular user account, I log into some of the system I work with. I have some stuff that I'm usually working with inside the environment. And as a user account, I don't really need to actively query the Active Directory and start following upon it, meaning I'm trying to brute force some of the high privileged accounts or stuff like that. So what we do, we actually obfuscate the Active Directory from the endpoints level only. When attacker will get a foothold on a machine that we're on, basically they will see false image of the Active Directory topology. They are going to see many high privileged accounts that most of them are not real. They are going to see many IT and administrator computers, and going to see many servers inside the environment that most of them are not real. But we do
I like that. So you're lying. Essentially, you're lying to the attacker, and the attacker thinks they've got something very, very interesting from the ADSI and LDAP queries that they're running, and that's going to keep the attacker busy looking for this interesting stuff. And really, it's not interesting at all.
Exactly. We are flipping the odds against the attacker. I mean, if you think about it, let's say you have 100,000 servers inside your environment. You have like a small environment and 100,000 users. What we can do without changing anything to the Active Directory or adding anything to the network, what we can do is we can obfuscate that Active Directory database, as Guy said. So after Javelin is deployed, what will happen is the attacker now will see, for example, 1 million servers instead of 100,000 servers. So 900,000 servers are fake. And the cool thing about it is all those fake resources is created using artificial intelligence, and the idea that attacker can interact with those fake servers. He can literally ask them, please tell me what is the application is running on that server, or please tell me, when is the last time that someone logged into that server? I want to be sure. So all of that is controlled. We're actually controlling the attacker perception, and we're changing the odds against him. So at the moment he will try to move laterally from that point, from that machine that he got a foothold on, towards one of those fake servers, identities or whatever, which is actually most likely to happen, then we will be able to detect him.
Now, Joff, I know exactly where you're thinking, I believe, because it's where I started thinking too. I'm like, well, as an attacker, can I just start to fingerprint those fake accounts and know that I'm being deceived? But you guys being really smart have thought of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There is no way for the attacker to distinguish between the fakes and the fake resources to the real resources. They look alike. You can, and they have
the same attributes. Yeah,
exactly.
But they're different. They're also different from customer to customer because the fake data is seeded basically on your real data. Correct?
Exactly. Based on.
Okay. So what you're saying is that you working with that customer, you're making that fake data look like it belongs in that customer context, like it should be there, and you've got such a big haystack, such a lot of information that the attacker is potentially never going to find the real information just because of the overload of stuff that's more interesting.
Exactly. But just one point to need to be emphasized is that everything's done automatically using the artificial intelligence. And don't get me wrong, guys. The artificial intelligence algorithm here is not to find attackers. It's just to learn the Active Directory database and take your, the customer data and the even their naming scheme, all the application, everything that they have in order to create those fake resources and those fake servers and identities, which is actually based on your data. And this is why it's different from customer to customer, from Active Directory to the other.
Interesting. So what happens if the attacker says, well, I suspect that what I'm seeing is incorrect. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm getting frustrated. And the attacker says, well, I'm going to see if I can just go back to network basics. I'm going to try to connect, to things in my locally adjacent subnet. I'm going to try to ignore the Active Directory. Is the attacker going to get anywhere, or is it just going to take them so long that they're going to give up?
Yeah, so it's a great question because part of the answer here is that once we detect someone actually interact with an element that doesn't really exist in the environment, whether it try to perform lateral movement to a computer that doesn't exist, or it try to brute force some account password, or even try to request a ticket to a service account that doesn't really exist. At this point, we automatically detect it. And we have a unique memory analysis tool that identify the exact process that was responsible basically on the host level. So we even have the ability to hunt down the process responsible for the queries and the lateral movement or whatsoever. And we can mitigate the risk from the endpoint once we found what was the source. So in this way, if an attacker got a foothold on a machine, we have a way to respond really quickly to this. And you can say that if he has other backdoors in the environment, it will probably have to fall back to some kind of network scanning.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you can react and mitigate relatively quickly or rapidly is huge, because then the attacker won't even have time necessarily, by the sounds of it, to fall back. Not that I know, I haven't witnessed your product in motion or anything, but it sounds like the attacker would not have the time to even be able to fall back to network games, that their process would be potentially killed, their backdoor might be closed, and the game is potentially finished for them. I suppose that's all customizable and configurable in your product, but it's
Well,
yeah, it's
in one of my questions along those lines, Joff, that I know is probably on Jack and Joff's mind is, well, so, you know, how do you do the agent deployment and how do you get the agent on all of those systems? And I was actually really impressed with the answer. And I was telling Guy and Clayton from Javelin Networks, I'm like, I talked to a lot of vendors, and like it takes a lot to impress me. So if you just want to just talk briefly about you know, the deployment and what your answer is when people say, okay, so how do I install the agent?
So the beauty about it is that there is no agent here. So you can call it's kind of a magic, because the way it works is that we listen to Active Directory security events. Then we know whenever a computer basically logs into the network, because once a machine boots up, you need to authenticate with the Active Directory. It's part of the trust the computer has to finish with the Active Directory. This way, we know automatically when a computer logs into the network. So at this point, we are reaching out using native protocol. Basically, we need only SMB protocol from a core machine that stays in the network. And we create this artificial topology of the Active Directory using smart injection into the memory. So we're doing it by running a one-time executable on the remote endpoint that creates the entire protection for it. Once the executable is finished, it's terminated, it's removed from the computer, and basically the beauty about it, it's happened on the startup. Basically, if an attacker is already there, it doesn't even his process doesn't even get up before we already deployed.
I kind of the way I've been thinking about that since I saw the demo was, it's kind of like if every client or operating system was a browser, and you're just hooking that with JavaScript and like hooking it into like a B framework, right?
Yeah, it's basically something like that. You are waiting to computer to get in, and once you get in, it just automatically gets the product deployed and in agentless way, meaning it doesn't really have a process running, or it doesn't necessarily need to update policy or stuff like that. It's all happens statically in this computer. So our product actually only wakes up when someone actually tries to actively query the Active Directory. Only then the protection kicks in and basically allow us to mitigate the threat very, very quickly.
That's so cool. Did you guys have a demo that you were going to do today, or are we going to reserve that? I know we've got some other segments planned. Did you guys want to show a short demo?
For the next one.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
Yeah, it might take some time. Yeah.
It's totally fine. You know, I was pressing Guy on it exactly, and Joff and Jack, I know you're probably both also thinking this, like, what exactly is that? And that's like the patent pending method that you guys have for doing that, hooking the end stations, essentially?
Yes. Yeah. So we can't really talk about it, but...
That doesn't mean I'm going to stop. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop asking. I'm going to try and ask the question as many different ways as I can. I think it's really, really fascinating.
I can say, Paul, is that methodology that we developed was considered in our community for something that is impossible, and we managed to do that. We managed to create that solution that is first. I mean, it's invisible to the attackers. I mean, they cannot see any process that is running, but more than that, it's very easy for the customer to integrate the solution. I mean, there is no communication back and forth from the endpoint to our core management, server. So in the end of the day, I can tell you that we worked almost 3 years just to develop that such a technology that again was considered until this time impossible.
And so 2 more points that I want to make in this segment, and there are going to be follow-on segments after this as well. A lot of people are pretty impressed, myself included, with Microsoft's ATA Advanced Threat Analytics. How does your solution differ from Microsoft Threat Analytics?
So Microsoft ATA is, at the end of the day, as you said, is an analytics solution. It's an additional kind of nice to have feed for your SOC team, but it does not provide prevention or mitigation capabilities. And you're probably going to ask me why. So it's because its detection capabilities are not definitive. They are relying on and trying to identify kind of anomalies. And at the end of the day, when they have an alert and when they send you an alert, you need as a SOC team, as a SOC security engineer, you need to literally manually investigate that alert before even trying to mitigate the risk. And that's kind of the main mission here in Javelin, is that we have the ability not just to detect in a definitive way, and not just in a definitive way about, okay, I think I saw the attack was originated from this IP. No, it's not enough in today's world. You need to literally tell me exactly which process was the process that responsible for the attack. And then you have the ability to either mitigate that in real time or even monitor it and see if it's maybe communicating inside or outside.
Well, and that's a great point, communicating inside, because ATA is essentially sniffing all of the Active Directory communications on the server side, not endpoint to endpoint, which is, I think, a huge differentiator for you guys. So in terms of ransomware, like, have you been able to help with the ransomware problem in this light?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that kind of the next big wave of the ransomware is something called ransomware, and how it's actually different from the regular ransomware that is actually targeting one particular machine and trying to encrypt that. The ransomware is actually wants to get and encrypt your entire corporate, including your backups, and then ask for a bigger ransom. And guess what? I mean, in order them to move laterally and control your entire organization, they manipulate the Active Directory.
Credentials, and reconning the Active Directory. So we have actually a very good example for it. There was a campaign called SAMAS. It still operates in the US. There are lots of healthcare and health vendors that got affected from it. Basically, the way it works is very, very simple. It's very simple PSExec tool. It has a tool that actually query all the computers in the network by enumerating the domain computers group. Then it passes computer after computer trying to ping it. If you get a ping, it just, using PSExec, you just copy the ransomware and run it remotely. And it's all being done by storing credentials, of course.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Of you guys? What about false positives, right? I mean, they're legitimate software that needs to query Active Directory. And what if that legitimate software gets a bad answer back from your software and that legitimate software then malfunctions? Can you talk about that aspect of your development and how you had to overcome some of those problems?
Yeah, it's actually simple. And in order to kind of understand the answer, the main fact that needs to be digested from the customer perspective is he needs to understand that 95% of his actual environment do not need to query the Active Directory. Now, what we created, our challenge is, as you said, to deal with that 5% that is left. So what we did is we created a whitelist that is so unique that it has the ability to literally pinpoint to the actual identity and to the actual users that is actually controlling and logging into the server. So give you an example, you can log into the server and I will log into the same server. We will both see a different view of the Active Directory based on that whitelisting that actually is done automatically.
Yeah. And to add to Roy, we also have basically automatic learning on servers, and we have the ability to automatically pinpoint to actual processes that are running queries all the time. We can see if the processes are querying it again and again. And if he does, we automatically whitelist this process and enable him to see the actual Active Directory as it is. So the beauty about it is you don't need to explicitly build the whitelist. We build it for you, and you basically then choose the whitelist that we created to deploy on either the servers or the endpoints.
Fantastic. Well, Roy and Guy, thank you very much for coming on this evening. Where can people find out more information just based on this first segment? And like I said, we do have more planned. We're going to delve into a lot more details and a lot more capabilities in your products too, which also impressed me. So.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for having us. I mean, I invited the audience to join and to go to our website and to see more details about Javelin and our solution. And on the I look forward to the next episode when we will show a live demo on how attackers can get 100% visibility on your entire corporate.
Sweet. Javelin-networks.com is the website. Check them out. Roy and Guy, thank you very much for appearing on this episode of Paul Security Weekly. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.